Facebook page.
We told you earlier in the show that the Reverend Jesse Jackson has spent the last 2 days here in Cincinnati giving his support to the Occupy movement. In fact, Jackson says that the Occupy movement is equal to the civil rights movement of the 60s. But is that really an equal comparison? Ben has the reality check.
Well, during his visit to Cincinnati over the past 2 days, the Reverend Jackson has drawn comparisons of Occupy to the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s. But are those comparisons an honest reflection of history?
We stand in a great tradition about the King's wrought for justice. In 1968, Brother King organized on his last birthday, January 15, 1968, he organized an occupation movement to achieve public accommodations, to achieve the right to vote. There was too much wealth in too few hands, too much poverty, too much war.
That statement from an historical perspective is not entirely accurate. Dr. King's fight was for racial equality and the right to vote. And while he did have strong feelings about poverty and war, his tactics were very different than what we're seeing in Occupy today. And Reverend Jackson himself coming under fire for these comparisons. The niece of Martin Luther King Jr., Alveda King, said that these two movements are drastically different in the way they're playing out.
The whole movement was founded in prayer and in crying out to God in a peaceful movement. And this movement is not peaceful. Reverend Jackson knows that this is not the model that my uncle and my father, Reverend A.D. King, upheld. He knows that.
And that is true. Martin Luther King Jr. insisted on nonviolence. But consider what we're seeing daily from Occupy. There have been at least 6 reports of sexual assaults at various camps. In New York, a man was arrested for assaulting a paramedic and breaking that EMT's leg. San Diego, streetcar vendors forced to close up shop when protesters, angry that they stopped receiving free food, ransacked and vandalized the carts. The angry mob not only scrawled graffiti on those carts, they reportedly splattered them with blood and urine as well. A man walking through Zuccotti Park in New York, taking pictures of the occupiers' camp, was attacked by an unidentified man who struck him in the face, leaving him with a laceration. In Boston, homeless protesters were removed from Dewey Square after they were discovered to have knives and stashes of illegal drugs. In Portland, cops responded to calls of Molotov cocktails being thrown near the city's World Trade Center. That aside from defecation in the streets and on police cars. The leaders of the civil rights movement, however, chose the tactic of nonviolence as a tool to dismantle institutionalized racial segregation, discrimination, and inequality. In 1955, the Reverend George Lee, NAACP worker, he was shot in the face and killed just for urging blacks in the Mississippi Delta to vote. 1963, the bombing at the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama. It was one of the most abhorrent crimes of the civil rights movement. 4 young girls between 11 and 14 years old were attending Sunday school. They were killed when a bomb exploded at the church. 20 other people were injured. In addition to these murders, there was violence that persisted through mass arrests, jail beatings, lynchings, and other church bombings. So here's what you need to know, is what the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. himself wrote May 4th, 1966. Quote, "If one is in search of a better job, it does not help to burn down the factory. If one needs more adequate education, shooting the principal will not help. Or if housing is the goal, only building and construction will produce that end. To destroy anything, person or property, cannot bring us closer to the goal that we seek." End quote. And that is Reality Check.